Dose of energy.
Hey, that's a great idea. It's Dub. It's Catarina. How's it going, Catarina?
As great as can be right now.
Well, I'm about to make your morning even more. I saw this really funny promo thing for, it's called Zillow, and I think you can rent or buy houses through it or something, or maybe it's like almost like Airbnb too. Anyway, you know, it's one of those videos that realtors or people selling houses make with drones. They're like, look at the inside and the outside.
I know what video you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's showing a house in Philadelphia, and the drone goes in, and it's like, here's the living room that's been clearly updated and renovated. It's a beautiful house. But then they're like, look at the backyard, and there's not much of a yard. It's more like a balcony up against a fence. But you can clearly see that this beautiful house in Philadelphia, which is very affordable given how nice it is inside, backs right onto a graveyard. And so the conversation is about, what, would you live there? I mean, I know you have some belief in the supernatural, Catarina. I mean, how would you feel?
No, I don't have some belief. I believe.
How would you feel about living next to a cemetery? Is that something you would do?
So here's the thing, Dub. When you are in a city or in a in a major area, like, so I grew up in the GTA. I was born and raised in Toronto, but I've lived in many tri-cities, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you have no choice but to live next to a cemetery, and I've lived next to a cemetery many times. The last apartment before I moved here, when you went out into my balcony, in front of me was a building, and to the side was a cemetery.
Okay.
And
so
like
you were
people
basically right beside one, essentially, or what's that, adjacent or kitty corner, whatever you want to call it.
So if I had like a north-facing unit, I would have seen the cemetery completely. And it's interesting because I think people who aren't from a city have very different perspectives on this, and maybe it's just because I lived in like this huge city that I had no choice. This isn't the first time I've lived next to a cemetery, like literally right next to a cemetery, or down the street or down the block. And like, people will take a stroll through the cemetery. Like, that's where they take their morning jog or their morning walk. Like, it's not as creepy as in the movies, or like, I guess what people would even assume here.
No.
Did I like it? Would I do it by choice? No.
Yeah. I know my sister used to live pretty well next door to one, and they would often go through walks through there. I went for walks, I should say, through there with them. It's peaceful, because usually
that's the thing.
People when they're in a cemetery, they're being quiet, they're being respectful, they're maybe pondering on life or whatever it happens to be, right? As long as you're not disturbing if there happens to be a service going on or something, it's great. I used to take walks through one near my house all the time. Again, it's just because it was just like tranquil, I think is a good word to describe it too, right? It's a nice place for a walk.
Yeah, so I was like, isn't it so strange that like we find so much confusion and discomfort in death, but then like where there's all these dead people, we're like, wow, this is so peaceful.
Yeah, as long as it's not next to your house, I guess. Because I mean, a lot of these comments, people were like, nope. I'm like, I don't know, why not? I mean, it means you're this is going to sound like a joke, and I really don't mean it, but it means your neighbors are quiet, because they are. It's usually pretty quiet in a cemetery, so I mean, if that's what you're looking for,
let's put the brake, push it. I don't know what the word is. Okay, just put your hand or your foot on the brake. Absolutely not. It's not like peaceful. Like, if you believe, even if you don't believe in the supernatural, there are certain things that you can't explain.
Fair enough.
And like, it trips you out. Like, when my last apartment that I lived in, we had just moved in, and Janelle was taking a bath. I walked away to grab a towel, and I could hear his wet footsteps behind me, and there was nobody there. And then Janelle screams in the washroom. The towel, like the hand towel, as I walk in, went flying across the room, and we both just kind of looked at each other like, okay.
Well,
And every single night that I lived there, and I noticed anytime that I ever had a sleepover somewhere else or when I moved here, this stopped. But every night he would tell me about his friends that would wake him up and tickle him. Yes, okay, so it's not peaceful.
fair point. It could be quiet depending on. Well, anyway, we want to hear what you think of this idea. I mean, you got a reasonably priced place that happens to be next door to a cemetery. Do you care? Would you still buy it? What would you do? We'd love to hear about it. 800-2360 on the Fort City Chrysler line. Comment on the Facebook page video that's up right now. We'd love to hear from you.
Do you have some good news you'd like to share with the community? We here at Moose